be calm, admit defeat. We the type to spit the heat to make.
So I put together an interesting slide here. I like it a lot. It kind of takes some of the personalities that we hear about every day, and it puts them in the context of what these four personalities are. And you'll see that there's some overlap between some of the people that have multiple personality types, if you will. Let's say people like Bill Gates. Now, you might find it odd that Bill Gates is under marketing, but it makes a lot of sense because the reality is Bill Gates was an incredible strategist when he was at Microsoft. He still is. He's quite a brilliant mind, but he was ultimately a strategist. He really understood this concept of bundling Office with the OS, or putting the OS on the computers, and everybody was thinking about computers and the PC, and he was thinking really about the OS and software at a time when people weren't really thinking about that. And that was incredibly strategic. And this idea that they would own the operating system and that all these things would sort of flourish off their central position at the center of the universe there for owning the operating system, incredibly strategic. And so he was the ultimate marketer, if you will. He wasn't the arts and crafts sort of, soft marketer type that we tend to think of as marketing. He was really the ultimate person who puts that product in the market. Steve Jobs, of course, was another incredible marketer. He was both on the messaging side in terms of presenting the product. He was the minimalist in terms of how we're going to position the product and design it and so on. So these marketing influences came into play inside the company. Incredibly valuable marketing mind. And now you've got the Richard Branson types, who are these incredible marketers by sheer promotion. And this is when we tend to think of marketing as the traditional marketing sense, which is, okay, he's getting out there and just promoting things, marketing it. The name Virgin there's a really good story. In fact, you see one of my books on my bookshelf here is Losing My Virginity, which was one of the first books that I read years ago when I was first starting my company, inspired me to be an entrepreneur. And so Richard Branson is the ultimate promoter, and therefore he's somebody who has obviously succeeded greatly with all of his companies. Then you get into the creators. Again, you've got people like Bill Gates, who really created the Microsoft OS and Office and all these fascinating applications and so on. Of course, Steve Jobs doesn't need an introduction on that. The products that they created over at Apple and that he really drove are just second to none and legendary. You have even people like Walt Disney there, the black and white picture there, a fascinating creator who's really created this whole brand and this experience from Disneyland to all these movies and music and all these things. So Disney was the ultimate creator's products that were created 50 years ago or more. We still consume today, Cinderella and so on. So incredible creative personality. Jeff Bezos is creating this entire platform for people to sell all these goods. He created this logistics platform. That's why you also see him on the operating side as well. And Mark Zuckerberg, of course, created this social network. So the creators are often the people we think about, especially here in Silicon Valley, but of course there are many, many types of products that we can think about out there in the market, from consumer packaged goods to the trendy items that come out in the market. And this of course is the exciting part of being an entrepreneur, is we tend to think about the products that people buy, and that's what inspires a lot of people to want to be entrepreneurs. But of course there's a lot more that goes into a company than just products. In fact, and as we'll see, success is not only driven by product, it's driven by all of these things, and many companies fail, in fact, and they don't grow precisely because they're so focused on product that they really don't execute in the other really critical ways that make companies succeed. And that's one of the key downfalls of a lot of, for example, Silicon Valley companies. They're so interested in being the creators that they really fail in terms of the sales, the marketing, the operations, and so on. Then you move into the sellers. Of course, you've got the classic seller would be Richard Branson. Another guy would be Mark Cuban, of course, a modern personality. Bill Gates was incredible at sales. He was an amazing negotiator. He went out and negotiated the sale of all the OSs, of course, negotiating the operating system with IBM back in the day. Steve Jobs was the consummate salesman, getting up on stage and presenting all these new Macintosh products, a different type of sale. That's more of the broad presentation sale, not a direct one-to-one negotiation. But a lot of people might not notice, but when he was developing iTunes, he went out and negotiated and sold the idea of iTunes to all of the record industry and recording industry personalities and types, and made them, kind of got them on board to use the iTunes product. And that's one of the unsung sort of great successes of Apple, was that they got everybody on board to distribute their music through the iTunes platform. And this was back in a time when music was free through Napster and so on. So an incredible sales job by Steve Jobs to get those products out there. Disney was great. Disneyland was not easy to make. There's another book on my bookshelf about the making of Disney. Extraordinary story. And it was not easy to put Disneyland together. It took many years. And so Walt Disney was an incredible salesman to get this concept. We take it for granted now, of course, this amusement park, who wouldn't want to go there? But back in the day, it didn't exist, and so he really drove it through and got people to invest in it and built it up and so on. An incredible salesman. And then the operators, we have a lot of really well-known personalities here. I wish, by the way, we had a lot more women. You know, I have a daughter, and I'd love to see more women out there as the really successful entrepreneurs. And there are probably some people here who say, well, hey, well, what about so-and-so? She should be on this list too. And I know that we're missing a lot. It's way too male-dominated here, way too male-heavy. But I did put Sheryl Sandberg in there. She's an extraordinary operator. She's really been driving the growth of Facebook on the operational side, as people like Zuckerberg and others are driving the strategy and the product and so on. And so it's sort of a testament to the fact that Facebook probably wouldn't have grown as well, or Google wouldn't have grown quite so quickly if you hadn't had a good operator like Eric Schmidt on board, or any of these people. In the black and white there, the consummate operator was John Rockefeller, who was the wealthiest entrepreneur of all time, probably, and many times, in fact, wealthier than even Bill Gates today, because he had this extraordinary integration strategy, this vertical and horizontal integration strategy. We basically owned the entire energy market in the U.S., the oil market at the time, and had a percentage of his company was worth a percentage of the GDP because he had these extraordinary operations. He didn't make oil. He didn't conceive of the idea, oh, people should be, you know, consuming oil. It wasn't this sort of thing that we get excited about here, like in Silicon Valley and you know, the startup type idea today. He just basically was the consummate entrepreneur by building this extraordinary operation. That's really why he created such unimaginable wealth. You got Tim Cook, you have, of course, Larry Ellison, Jeff Bezos, and so on. So, you know, as you think about what your role is as an entrepreneur, you know, you might want to be very candid with yourself and say, who are you really? And this is the purpose of these slides here. Are you really the product person? Because yes, it gets a lot of the spotlight and it's glamorous and people tend to be thinking about it more nowadays because doing startups is kind of trendy and in vogue and so on. But the reality is there are lots of really exciting roles, and there are many very, very important roles in a company that are not just related to product, that actually help the company grow. And if you grow extraordinarily quickly, then you become an Inc. 5000 company, or you become perhaps, you know, a billionaire like Rockefeller, Gates, or somebody like that. And so, you know, being an operator is something that is near and dear to my heart, because I think that operations are incredibly fun. I think if I gave you a bowling alley and said, here, run this bowling alley, you would probably be, you know, challenged to run that bowling alley and grow it, because the operating details behind all that would actually be more challenging than you might think. And so look at these different personalities and think, by the way, they all center around revenues. This is really the takeaway message here, is that when you're building a company, you want to be thinking about, how is this driving revenues? So the marketing should be driving revenues, the product should be driving revenues, sales, of course, drives revenues, then operations, how are these centered around revenues? So all these personalities, which one are you? And so take a few minutes, take some stock of what you really like doing. What do you find yourself doing every day? Are you really thinking about product all the time? Or do you actually like some of the operating details? Or do you love getting out in front of customers? Do you like talking? Do you like presenting? Do you like meeting with people? Do you like gathering ideas and asking questions? Do you like listening to people and hearing what their pain points are and what they want? In which case you'd be a great marketer or a good salesperson. Do you like positioning the product strategically in the market, or messaging, or all these things? And so look at these different personalities across that wheel there and think, which one are you? And just suffice it to say, they're all really, really important. None is more important than the other, although some may seem to be more important because the attention the media gives them. But they're all critically important. They're all, say, 25% of the equation. Sometimes operations might be 80%, sometimes creation might be 80%, sometimes marketing or sales might be 80%. But they're all equally important in the larger scheme of things. Find out which one you are and then dig into that and start to cultivate that skill and that role for yourself.